I hope this thing's working because my voice has been going out. I've been here for too many days. My voice goes quick. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me. I'll get right to it because Delisi asked me to tell you a story that I referred to in my panel earlier today if we have time, and I think I'll be able to get to it. So let's just get right to it. Some people ask me why I always pace when I talk. And at first I thought, I don't know, it's just something I do. And then it occurred to me, I mainly do it because I like to make the camera guy super frustrated. See? Okay, so thanks for having me, everybody. My request was to talk about how to inspire the next generation of doctors. And I don't know that I like to give inspirational speeches, but for this, I think we need someone with more wisdom than me. So our teacher today is going to be Mr. Bob Curlis. Bob was a farmer in Hayesville, Kansas. He also happens to be Grandpa Bob to me. Bob lived until 2 years ago, and he died actively farming at the age of 96. And I would love it if someone said this about me in my obituary. I think you guys would feel the same way. His kindness and generosity were legendary to those who had the pleasure to know or meet him. That is a word, legendary, that just doesn't usually go with kindness and with generosity. And it's the words, I didn't write them, but they are true. And if we can't learn from this guy, who can we learn from? Okay? So that old man is going to teach us how to find the next generation of DPC physicians.
People take a lap around the pool in retirement, but 94-year-old Bob Curlis of Hayesville takes a lap around the field in his combine. Cake's Morgan Mobley rode along with him and shares his story.
94, and this is therapy for me.
Bob Curlis has been farming his whole life. These hands know hard work.
The good Lord blessed me in a lot of ways, and I just keep going.
It's in his roots, a legacy he's committed to carrying on.
This used to be my granddad's place.
The past couple of years have been tough for farmers. This year is no different. It's been a slow start to the wheat harvest with all the rain and flooding we've had.
Some years better than others, you know. This year's not too good. We've had a lot of wet weather.
Even still, Bob looks at the bright side.
But next year maybe it'll be different, you know, yeah.
His secret to not slowing down at 94 years old is really not that complicated.
This is a pretty simple life. I never did smoke or drink, and usually got my sleep, you know, regular sleep.
Bob knows his days are numbered, so he takes another lap around the fields, making the most of today.
This might be my last day. Then I might be cutting wheat 5 years from now.
With a bin filled with wheat, Bob shares these words of wisdom.
Just enjoy what you do and do the best you can, and the rest of it will take care of itself, yeah.
Bob isn't planning on quitting anytime soon. In fact, he tells me until his dying day, you can find him right here cutting wheat on the Curlis farm. Reporting in Hayesville, Morgan Mobley, Cake News, on your side.
All right, so that's an inspirational guy. He was very inspirational to me, and he has a lot to tell us. And here we go. So this is the quote from the video that I'm going to spend some time on today. And he says, enjoy what you do, and do the best you can, and the rest will take care of itself. By the way, he did not make it 5 more years, but he did cut wheat for 2 more years, and he died farming exactly like we all knew that he would. Here's what I want to ask. Is this what we're doing? Now, I would argue that most of us here who are practicing in the direct primary care model can answer these 2 questions in the affirmative. Now that I'm a direct primary care doctor, I love what I do. I mean, more than enjoy it, I love it. I look forward to it every day, which I could not say when I was on the inside. And I would also say that the model allows me to do the best I can. What about our colleagues that are inside the system? What can we say about those people? Well, let's have Grandpa Bob ask them, do you enjoy what you do? Well, You guys see these pictures, right? Online, on every article ever. Okay, so if you Google stock image with the words physician burnout, you get 18,000 results. You get 18,000 pictures of models wearing white coats touching their face. And I actually Googled doctors without burnout who don't touch their face or something, and I got a few of those. So there's not 18,000 pictures of stock models in white coats touching their face if that's not a real issue. So it's an issue, but we have, as I think Kenny, are you here? I think Kenny referred to this in the opening talk this weekend, or this week. The proper term is moral injury, which is when we perpetrate, bear witness to, or fail to prevent an act that transgresses our deeply held moral beliefs. It was written about in this paper from 2019 that if you guys haven't read it, I highly recommend. And I summarize it as violating the conscience. So when you're a doctor on the inside and you're in the room with a patient who needs a good half hour, 45 minutes, even an hour of your time, and the nurse knocks on the door and yanks you out of there to send you to the next patient because there's 3 in other rooms waiting and another 3 in the waiting room, it's violating your conscience because you're doing for that patient what you would not want to have done to you. And that is moral injury. Now, it's not that burnout still is basically overwork. Overwork is still possible, and I would argue that burnout is actually very likely to happen to me or any of us because we can still overwork, but at least we're not being morally injured in the process. So this is from that paper, and they talk about, on the inside, yoga, mindfulness retreats, and all that stuff, meditation. Well, it won't fix prior auths getting in the way of your care, no time to do your job right, or computer systems that aren't about taking care of patients, but about getting paid, right? So we can ask that question, do you enjoy what you do? Well, it's pretty weird for a job that morally injures you to be enjoyable, so the argument is no. Now, what about actual statistics on this? And I know this has been referred to a bit already in this conference, but a quarter of doctors are depressed. Right now, a doctor in the United States kills themselves every 22 hours. That's a really sad and true statistic, and it's particularly bad for women who in medicine are 130% higher than their age-matched counterparts with their suicide rates. So 2/3 wouldn't recommend the position and half want to quit. So once again, doctors on the inside, Grandpa Bob would say they're not doing this wise old advice that he gave the reporter who rode around with him on the combine. So what if he said to them, are you doing the best you can? Well, it didn't take me long to curate a dozen headlines from Google about overcharging inside the hospital system. If you have time and you can download the slides later, whatever, you can read all of them. But it's pretty crazy, 1,000, that article that Emily Silverman published 2 weeks ago where I was interviewed, she came out to our clinic. She described these prices in the best adjective possible. She called them Kafkaesque, which is very true. But $1,400 for a Band-Aid, $15 per Tylenol pill, all that kind of stuff. But these aren't just headlines. These are real. These are scans of people's bills. So in this case, a patient was charged $11 because she cried before surgery. In this one, a woman was billed $40 to hold her baby in the hospital after her C-section. And on this one, this is up north in San Francisco at Zuckerberg Hospital, where this poor dude got a bill for $3,000 for one stitch. He got a little tiny cut in the ER. They put one stitch, and he got a bill for $3,000. These are real. This is not doing the best we can for people, right? So what about the weights? The signs that are on the side of the highway, the infinity minutes in the or whatever. Like, if these signs would not exist on the side of the highway if waiting time to be seen and get health care wasn't a problem. Meanwhile, back to our headlines from the internet, there's doctors killing them, there's patients killing themselves in the medical center waiting room, there's veterans who died waiting on fake lists for care, or hidden lists, I should say. Obviously, a big problem with the system being broken. This Canadian woman dies after a 7-hour wait in the ER waiting room. But that's true not just in the emergency and urgent care fields, it's also true in primary care physicians' clinics. So as you can see here, 60% of American primary care offices have a 2-week wait for an appointment. Well, it doesn't do you a lot of good when you're sick now. Okay, 20%, 4 weeks, and only 10% can get you in the same day. All of us in direct primary care can always get our patients in the same day. So back to once you're in the doctor's office, what then? Well, now you're rushed. Once again, easy headlines. You find all these headlines about doctors being in big, gigantic hurry with long lines or with long waits and short amounts of care because the doctor's looking at the chart, not at the patient being rushed through because the system is so badly broken. So this is where I usually talk about the statistic about animal care versus human care in the United States. If you are a human and you want to go see your primary care physician, you're lucky if you get 7 or 8 minutes on average of the doctor's time. Many of you already know that. If you happen to be a dog or a cat, you will get at least 15 minutes of your doctor's time. The obvious conclusion there is if you want to spend time with a doctor, you should get a veterinarian. Here's my sort of, I guess I'll just say this is my opinion, that residents and medical students rarely have insight to this reality, or at least to its severity. I think there's exceptions to this, and we've had a few students and residents today that have been here this week, and I'm really happy to see them here. But overall, this reality is hidden from them. I'm not sure that I can sit here and accurately guess why that might be, but I've got all kinds of tinfoil hat reasons why I think that might be. But the bottom line is they're being kind of led down a primrose path, spending years and years in training, and then they get quite disillusioned. Do they not? So this is where we're going to come back to that in a minute. So the sales funnel thing is what we need to do to start with. And I hate even using that, but it's the right way to. You got to start with awareness. If you don't know about the thing, you won't buy the thing, right? And then interest, decision, and action. Awareness is where we are right now. We have to make young physicians aware of the problem, and then we'll dig into our credibility, emotions, and logic to sell it to them. So Grandpa Bob, if he was here talking to you, he would basically say, well, primary care is the same thing as farming, which may not seem intuitive, but I would argue that it is, and I will show you how. So if any of you were ever children and your parents read to you, I hope that you were children and that your parents read to you. If not, I'm really sorry about your childhood. But many of you may have had the book on the right read to you. It's Big Red Barn by Margaret Wise Brown. I assume many of you have had this book read to you because that book has sold 24 million copies in the United States. I know I read it to my children, preferably over her other, even more popular book that has caused more suicide in parents than the system has caused in physicians, Good Night Moon. Can I get anybody on a witness on the Good Night Moon? See, there you are. Golly. Oh, Good Night Moon, man. That's PTSD right there. But Margaret Brown's book about farming, Big Red Barn, I like that one because it reminded me of home. This is Grandpa Bob's barn. And that was where I played basketball when I was a kid, and it's where I spent many days in high school stacking hay and sweating and learning how to work. And, the farmhouse right next to it, been there for over 100 years. Here's my great-great-grandfather right outside that same house, milking a cow in what later became the driveway because they didn't have cars back then. And that's the farm I knew growing up. I was raised to do this. You can see my great-grandfather here on the right. He lost a leg. It didn't slow him down. He just farmed for several more decades on crutches. My grandfather to his right. And then came my uncle, the guy with no shirt and the crazy cuffs on his pants, and my dad behind him, and that's me in front. And then came along my cousin a little later, and that's 20 years ago now. But you can see this is me on the right. I was raised to do this. I was out there getting skin cancer at a very young age, as farmers are known to do. But it didn't come as a huge surprise to Grandpa whenever I did not go into the family business because from day one, I wanted to do that. So that's me diagnosing a grade 3 heart murmur on my mom. I saved her life that day. But Grandpa was not surprised because here I am on Christmas Day, the day I got my doctor kit, checking his tonsils. So he was not surprised that I did not go into the family business. But here we are, me and my sister, a couple of cousins, just my poor grandpa can't even get a place to sit hardly on his own combine. And this is sort of what we knew. And it's all I knew is the family business, the family farm, doing farming right. It's all I knew. By the time I was in high school, this is me in high school, I started becoming more aware and conscious of how hard Bob worked, both on the farm, but he also had a full-time job. It was never even something I thought about. He just always worked all day at his regular job, and then he worked all night, all weekend, and every summer farming. And I never thought about it until at some point, I think really when I was in DPC. His regular full-time job, by the way, was he was a maintenance guy and bus driver for the school district, where he worked for 61 years, which is a record that will never be broken in the Hayesville School District. In fact, about 3 months before he died, they built a multi-million-dollar transportation facility, and they named it after him. And here's a picture of my son holding the plaque next to Grandpa Bob before they hung it on the wall. And it looks like that, and it's awesome. It's like 3D. They had a guy model, it's like a little, sort of like a statue of my grandpa that's on the wall of the facility there. So he worked there for 61 years, and it never really occurred to me, I don't think, until 20-some years later when I became a DPC doctor, why that was. And I think it's because he believed there was only one way to farm, and that is running a small family farm and doing it right. Unfortunately, that's not exactly a big money operation, and he had to have the other job to make ends meet. This is what farming looked like to me. This one is my great-grandmother and her flock of chickens in 1940 in front of that same house. And that's the way chicken farming, I always thought, looked. In this way, a student might think that's what family medicine looks like whenever they're in school, or maybe even when they're in residency and they've still been protected from the reality of the cruel system. But the reality is, if you want to make money raising chickens, it looks like this. I did not know about this whenever I was in high school, when I was younger than high school. I didn't know something like this was a thing. It never even occurred to me, because family farming, doing it the right way, is all I knew, which is why I really appreciated Jeff Goldblum's character in Jurassic Park, because he had this quote: they were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think about whether they should, which I would argue is what's happening in the corporate farming world, where you have all of this stuff happening. These are cattle, a cow, a bull, and a couple calves from the same file where I found the pictures from my childhood. That's what cattle look like on our farm. Lots of room, lots of grass to eat, and let me tell you, they make some delicious steaks. I am, by the way, I do identify as a vegan or a vegetarian, because all those cows eat that grass and turn it into meat for me. But this is what it would look like if Grandpa made big money raising cattle. So the program director at my residency program, his father ran a CAFO like this. That stands for Confined Animal Feeding Operation, outside of Dodge City. And he told me that it was nothing on an average, you guys, an average day for a place like the one in the lower right of your screen to lose 9 or 10 animals. They had a thing, I think of it like the milkman. It's like a truck that comes around and delivers things, except for it was the dead truck that has a crane on it, and they had a dead pile, and every day at a very specific time, the guy would show up with his crane truck, put the 10 dead cows in it, and take them to the glue factory, and that was normal operating expense and normal loss for farms like that. I can tell you, if you look at the picture in your upper right corner, if any of those animals died, my grandpa would have been downright depressed for a while. We didn't lose cattle, and we did. It was a sad thing. These places in the lower right, they lose 10 of them a day, and it doesn't bother them a bit. How can we not make the jump that this is what healthcare has become? Okay, same thing with wheat farming. Here's us messing around on Grandpa's combine. No idea that it could be done with $1 million worth of combines in a gigantic field full of genetically modified grain that gets triple the yield at God knows what risk, because it's genetically modified stuff. So Bob farmed the right way. He loved what he did the best he can, and he was happy. And he's not alone. When I started writing this talk, I reached out to, you guys know I'm a rural physician, so I reached out by email to all of the people that come to my clinic. Many of them are small family farmers. I said, send me some pictures of your farms, and boy, did they do so. I think I've got them all. I think I've got them all into the talk here, and we can just do this all day long. But there's the dad showing his little boy how to plant things. little kids being taught how to farm responsibly and ethically on a small family farm. These are all patients of mine or of our clinic. This is the most photogenic of the families. They went all out with this request I sent them. This guy with his guitar is kind of photogenic. The guy in the blue shirt is also my PA. He also is a family farmer whenever he's not practicing medicine. And this guy in the cowboy hat is the father of my nurse, and those are my nurse's 4 children. This is my dentist, and he also is a farmer. Because, like I said, many family farmers, in order to do it right, don't make a lot of money, so instead they have to have a god-awful job like being a dentist. This one doesn't have any people in it. I don't even know whose farm this is, but I just thought it was a beautiful picture because they sent it to me. And this is a family I take care of with their little piglets. It's just a cute picture. But look at their faces. See how happy they are? I doubt the guy in the gigantic chicken CAFO had a smile on his face. Those chicken CAFOs, those big barns with 10 billion chickens in them, they usually have 6 or 8 of them like that, one next to another. And most counties and all the agricultural states in the United States don't allow them to be built pretty much within 1,000 miles of civilization because they smell so bad. And so they're the ones you see when you drive across I-80 and I-70 out in the middle of nowhere. And so I doubt that guy walking in the ocean of chickens had a smile on his face like the people in the picture you just saw. But just like the family farmers are farming ethically, direct primary care clinics today are practicing ethically, humanely, sustainably, and naturally. I cannot fail to make this analogy. Instead of this, it looks like this. And that's the way it ought to be. Now, how does that look for the clinic side of things? This is only about an hour from my house. Dr. Newhoffel's in here somewhere. There he is. He doesn't like this picture either because he knows exactly what the cost of this building did to the cost of healthcare in Lawrence, Kansas. But instead, we go from, just like I said, just like we go from this, right, to this, we can go from this to this. And this is my clinic, and it's out in I don't need the gigantic glass, whatever, or this, or this, or this, or this, or this. I can do this all day long. DPC clinics are coming up. They're small, and they're taking care of people, and they're doing it right. And none of us look like this. Instead, we look like this, or this, or this, or this. Smiles all around, right? So that's what we know. We know that we do not have to do this corporate garbage in order to do the job right and to make money, treat people the way we want to treat it, and be happy. The question is, how can we get the next generation of doctors to understand that whenever the allure of the money from the corporate crap is so big? All right, that's what I'm going to spend the rest of the time talking about. So I'm going to try to keep my momentum, you guys, but this part's going to suck. I did do some surveys in preparation for, no, it doesn't suck. It's just not, it's pie charts. I know, I hate them too. But I did a couple surveys. So here's some of the things that we learned. First of all, I asked lots of doctors all across the country about how they got into DPC. Here's some of the things I learned. For the first thing, you can see here that 61% of current DPC, these are practicing physicians, practice inside the system for at least 7 years. And almost half of them more than 10 years before they went into DPC. Now, this is a little bit harder to read in pie chart form, but watch what happens whenever I graph this out as a bar. This is percent of active DPCs versus the year they opened. And what you can see right here, and this is crazy, is 63% of DPC practices have opened in the last 5 years. Keep in mind, there's been DPC practices open for close to 15 years or whatever. So we have exponential growth of DPC. But how do we keep this going whenever some of the disturbing trends about students and residents that you'll see in a minute are potentially still a problem? When did you first learn about DPC? There's the majority of these, that the blue is a colleague, the red and orange are social media or through like the AAFP or some type of professional organization. But the really important statistic on this piece of pie is that right here, only 4% of practicing DPC physicians were exposed to the model as a student or a resident. Now, I think that's getting better. I had a conversation just a couple hours ago with a young man who's a resident who's here. I hope you're in here somewhere, dude. Josh. Anyway, there he is. Yeah, he told me, thanks for being here, by the way, you guys. It's awesome to have residents with us. He told me that give it up for them. Yeah. So he assured me that this number is getting better, that there are more residents than not are already aware of the model. So I do believe this number is getting better. But remember, the people that answer this survey are practicing physicians, not active students or residents or whatever. So this is what we're doing about this in the Direct Primary Care Alliance. During my presidency, which is up in about 3 months, I've made one of our biggest, trying to get our biggest new activities to reaching out to the next generation physicians. So we've called this the RAMS department, which stands for Residents and Medical Students. And Dr. Moore, are you in the house? So there he is. Dr. Moore, if I were Dwayne Alexandro Mountain Dew Camacho, this is where, you guys know what I'm talking about, right? President Camacho from Idiocracy. I'd be like, we got this guy, not sure. He's going to fix everything. Our guy not sure is Dr. Moore, who who recently has been so cool to take over the RAMS department for us, and he's supercharging it. And the first step, this is actually a slide that he made for another project we're working on, and he really wants us to understand the needs of these students and residents before we try to get them to understand us. So he's looking at their values, he's looking at their pain points, and we're trying to figure out, all right, how can we get in front of them? So obviously we're going to be working towards more and more presence in medical schools and residency programs. How we do that is it's going to be an uphill climb to some degree. The second survey I put together was of new resident graduates. So here's kind of what we learned about this one. First of all, how many of the doctors who signed this started on the inside? 90%. So only 12% started right out of residency. Again, these are of practicing physicians right now. I expect these numbers to change over time. Check this out. Are you glad you did DPC right out of residency? So for those, that 12% right there, I asked them, are you glad you went straight into DPC? And 92% of them said yes. Only one said no, and only one said, well, this sucks too. I wish I just wouldn't have been a doctor. That's the orange one. I really feel sorry for that person, whoever it was. It was an anonymous survey, or I'd send them some cookies or something. Okay. Now, this one didn't have a whole lot to do with the RAMS department, but I was just curious. Since I'm talking to doctors who went straight from residency into DPC, I asked them, did they feel like their residency prepared them? And interestingly, half of them said no. However, of that half, the majority of them said they curated ample resources to do what they feel is a good job. And about half said they thought it was great. And then there was this 8% that was like, yeah, it was about 2 people out of the 25. No, I don't really think I was ready, and I probably should have worked on the inside first and done a little more volume. So these are, again, from the ones who went right out of DPC into residency into DPC. I asked them if it was a financial stress. 2/3 said a little bit, but they hustled and they made it work. 1/5 were spoiled because they had money from somewhere else. And then there was a small percentage that did have a little bit of a financial stress from it. And I think one there, maybe the green one, was like it was so bad it might have just destroyed their business model or made them get a divorce or something horrible. I don't know. So in general, they make it work. So what about for all the doctors? Did DPC, so these are the ones who did not start right out of residency. Now the question for them was DPC an option for you, right? And so half of them, this would be me, DPC wasn't invented yet. But then check out the 17% there. They knew about DPC, but they chose not to go that route. And then there's a third of them that it was a thing, they just hadn't learned about it yet. And then they found out later and went into DPC. So again, these are for the doctors that started on the inside. The question here was, just do you think that doctors coming out of residency should go into DPC or not? And the big blue section is, well, if they really know that's what they want to do, if they've researched it and they've figured all of it out and they know what their money situation is, go for it. But look at all the red and orange are all people that are like, no. Either they should spend some time on the inside to see what it's like, or no matter what, they should do it. But those are half that said, maybe you ought to work on the inside first. Dr. Moore said something to me a couple weeks ago that reminded me of this slide. I think you called it like the Afghanistan principle or something, which is something that only an Army guy would say. But he's right. He's like, I don't need to go to Afghanistan and get shot at and sleep in the sand and like all of that. I'll just take your word for it and stay here. That's kind of the principle. Is a lot of us are like, you don't need to go to Afghanistan, like just trust us, DPC's awesome, But at least half of the doctors think maybe you ought to get a chance to go put your boots on the ground for a while and see what you're missing out. There's definitely some pros there. One of them is it gives you something to compare to, right? So you get some what's the word I'm looking for? It's an R word. Perspective. It's a P word, but it does have an R in it. That's what I meant. You get some perspective because if you go straight into DPC, I tell this to every time I'm on the stage in front of young physicians at the DPC Summit. I tell them, this is not easy. And if you think it's easy and you're doing this because it's supposed to be a cakewalk, then you need to go away because it's not for you. If they go right out of residency into DPC, they may find themselves to be disillusioned because they're like, oh my gosh, this is hard. And we're like, told you it was hard. Like, it's not supposed to be easy. So maybe you ought to go on the inside first, and then all of a sudden your bed in the United States feels a lot more comfortable when you've slept in the sand and in the heat getting shot at. Okay, so why didn't you go in? It was kind of a mixed bag. Some people needed money. Some people wanted experience. Some were just nervous. Some had other obligations. This is a pretty interesting one. When you combine this slide with the next slide, are you glad you waited to do DPC? The majority are, yes, I'm glad I waited. And some were like, the 35% are, yes, I'm really glad I waited. The other 65% are like, well, it kind of sucked. I get that. But you know what? There was something about it that was still definitely beneficial. But the interesting thing is the absence of no's. None of those said, no, I wish I had gone straight into DPC. That's really interesting to me. So now I ask them, if you can get a do-over, since you have a chance, pretending you are residency now, if you could get a do-over, would you go right into DPC right out of residency? And check it out. Still, 83% said no, I would probably do what I did. I wouldn't change, which I just found that to be fascinating. I thought that the blue and the red would be switched in this graph. But what I get from those two graphs is right here. 0% of practicing DPC physicians who chose to start on the inside completely or utterly regretted the decision, and 84% of them wouldn't make the same decision. Now, for those of us who had no choice but to start inside because we hadn't figured out, DPC wasn't a thing, we didn't know about it, whatever, about 1 in 5 says just go DPC if, when they're giving someone advice. Because, yeah, DPC wasn't an option for you, but it is for new grads. What would you tell them? Still, half of them are like, it's a nuanced decision. Don't take it lightly. And then a quarter is like, no, you should go work on the inside. Go to Afghanistan so you know how comfortable your bed is. And then the 1 out of 5 is like, no, they hate the system so much, they're just like, run away. So, all right. Now I ask the same people, now knowing what you know now, if you went back and you got a do-over, these are the ones who had to start, would you do it differently? And still, even though it sucked enough to push me out ultimately, I don't think I'd do things differently, or at least I'd hesitate. So again, that's a very telling thing. So to analyze all this stuff, I think the number one thing is the bottom one here. If residents choose to go straight into DPC, they'll be glad they did. But if they choose to delay, they may be equally glad they delayed. So it probably doesn't matter. So we're back to that nuance, and that is figure out what's right for you. The upper one there is that not all residency graduates are best off going straight to direct care. So our outreach to them does not need to be, oh my God, student and resident, let me get you right into direct care right away. That is not the approach we probably ought to be taking. It doesn't mean that we can't be ready for those people. We have some of those residents in the house right now. My guess is you guys are going to go straight into DPC. You've been studying it. You've been following it. This nuance, you're prepared for it. You know it's coming. You've heard me say 100 times, it's going to suck. You're not going to make any money for a while. You're ready for that, but that doesn't mean all students or all residents are in that boat. So what we need to do is let them know that we're here and that we're here to help them when they are ready to be unplugged from the matrix. The last thing here is I want to talk about, everybody I've been talking about right now is residents. These young physicians have already chosen, should I just be quiet until the airplane goes over? Because my voice is gone. They've already chosen family medicine. That's already their choice. And now we're just saying, hey, since you already chose family medicine, you should go do the good version of it, not the one that treats patients like commodities and livestock. So that is the thing that I think we probably need to be thinking the most about, and that's this guy right here. We do not have data on doctors that specialized, and now that they know about what we do, man, that looks great. Because here I am stuck being a rheumatologist or some god-awful specialty that I would hate. But they're definitely out there, and they need, I don't know how you unplug them from the matrix, right? How do you unplug the 20-year veteran of rheumatology and put him in a primary care practice? That may not be possible, all right? But what we can do is help the students that have not gotten on the wrong boat yet. So I'm going to tell a story really quick. I'm still doing good on time. I teach for the KU Med, and I do a lot of third and fourth year rotations. I do a rural rotation for fourth year students, and they don't usually come to me for a DPC rotation. They come to me as a rural rotation, and they get the benefit of seeing the DPC model in action as well. And I'm known as somewhat of a cowboy. I do a lot of surgical things and some of that stuff. And students, I let them really do everything, and they really enjoy the rotation. Usually after the first day, they're just gung-ho because they're going to basically get to be a doctor for a month, and they love it. And so I look forward to seeing their smiles at the end of that first day. When they're like, wow, this is going to be fun. This one day, this kid was not pumped up like that. In fact, he looked like he was depressed at the end of the first day. And and I asked him what was wrong, what was with the Eeyore impersonation, and he goes, this is true, you guys. He goes, when I was in medical school, when I first came to medical school, I wanted to be a family doctor. I wanted to do exactly what you are doing here. After only one day, he had seen this in action. This is what I want to do, he said. He said, but then, and I think all of you doctors know what I'm going to say. What happened during his third year rotation? His third year family medicine clerkship. You can yell out. It sucked. It downright sucked because they will run him through some clinic in the city where they have 30 or 40 doctors, each one of them seeing 20 patients a day, and it's just treating them like livestock, running them through like cattle, and then the doctor's burned out and ticked off and frustrated and spends all night long charting and all of that. And the dude's like, oh, wait, this is family medicine? Well, now I don't want to do this. This is the kid who grew up reading Margaret Wise Brown's Big Red Barn and then showed up to his first day of the farm, and it's like 10 billion chickens and it smells like crap. And he's like, this is farming? This is nothing like my childhood book. So this kid was kind of depressed. And this is the image that was in my mind when I listened to him tell the story, is he is on the boat in the foreground in this picture, but he just came to the conclusion he was supposed to get on the one going the opposite direction in the background. And now he's like, crap, I'm on the wrong boat, but we've already said sail, they're going that way, but I know I'm on the wrong boat, but I don't really know if I can get off now. I mean, you probably can, but now you got to swim, right? So if he does jump off, what's that mean? I don't know, maybe he does 1 year of, oh, by the way, if I didn't tell you, he matched in psych. So when he was on my rotation, he had already matched in psych. No wonder he was depressed. So he could do 1 year of his internship in psych, get back out, get back into the match, maybe have to scramble because now he's some weird version of non-traditional or whatever. That's the swim, and he might make it to the other boat, and he may be all right, but he lost, if nothing else, he lost a year of his life. That, you guys, is who we need to get the message. Because is Kenny here? Kenny, at his first talk, said, 6% of residents last year matched in family medicine? Our goal, or the AAFP, gosh, I didn't want to say our when I said AAFP, sorry about that. The goal that the AAFP set was 15%, 25 by 2030, which is still too low, but whatever. The bottom line is we undershot it by a long ways. That is the problem. That 6 is the wrong number, is the number we need to fix for DPC, because even if they're going, wow, this is awesome, it's too late, they're already on the wrong boat. So to inspire the next generation of DPC physicians, we must reach them with our message. But many of them will find us even if we don't find them first. But I would argue that to grow the generation, we have to reach them before they become physicians, because so many of them get disillusioned or in some other way jaded by the whole brokenness of the system, that at some point they're like, I'm just going to go where the money is. Show me ortho. Show me ophthalmology or something. I think the ophthalmologists are really the ones who kill themselves the most, if I had to be honest. Seems like it would be for me. Okay. It's like, you know what I'm talking about? Like, which is more clear, more crisp? Click, click. Which is more clear? Click. all day. I don't care how much you pay me, man, it ain't worth it. This is my message. There is hope, and you can be the physician you always wanted to be. These are a couple of paintings that I've always liked, and I always tell people that I always wanted to be the kind of doctor that Norman Rockwell would paint a picture of. And hope is the message. And as we all know from Star Wars, rebellions are built on hope. So here's what I would like all of you to do. Find a student, find a resident, and get in front of them. Whether you go to their school and give a talk, whether you go to their residency and give a noon conference, whether you get involved with the family medicine interest group or do what Clodagh Ryan in Chicago does. She does a lot of stuff where she gets in to the schools teaching more about the business of medicine, because they're starting to do a little bit more of that so that students understand how insurance works, which is kind of the same way torture works. They learn the same thing at the same time. But you can get in the back door that way. Say, I'm going to teach them about the business of medicine, and I'm going to teach them a little bit about the free market. We've got to get the message of hope that you can have a rewarding career to them before they decide what they're going to do, even before they match. So if we do that, we can live and they can live Bob's advice. Enjoy what you do the best you can, and the rest will take care of itself. And the rest looks like this. You live out 96 years on the family farm with a smile on your face, and a dude never died so happy, dying. I wish I could say he died on the seat of a tractor. I used to really, really want that to happen, because it would have made this type of story way better. He had been on the seat of a tractor within a few days of his death, but not quite. I wanted us to find him like in a tractor that's half up a tree in a fence line, where it would be awesome. I would frame that picture and put it up, and he died on the seat of a tractor, or even better, drove across a field and went through a hospital or something. I don't know. Okay, so that's it. Do you want me to tell my story? I don't have to. All right, so I was asked by a couple of people, including Delicia, to tell my story about the nurse practitioner student that I failed. So she went directly from nursing school into nurse practitioner school. Didn't have any experience whatsoever. She was in my office back when I was working on the inside. And she was from the Middle East, but if you talked to her on the phone, you would think she grew up right here in Southern California. And she was a party girl. She always went out chasing basketball players for the University of Kansas, and we call those jersey chasers. And that's what she wanted to do, was party with basketball players. She did not care about her education. And it's sad, but it's true. But what's great is the way that she talked, because I sent her in to see a patient, and a 63-year-old gentleman, and she came out of the exam room to give me a report. And I'll just tell, how many doctors, just real quick, I don't want to bore everybody, a lot of doctors. So those of you who aren't doctors, this gentleman had preseptal cellulitis, a superficial infection of the skin of the eye, of the eyelids around the eye. So with my sore throat, I got to hydrate up to do her voice for you. Okay, well, how'd it go in there? What'd you find out? Oh, well, he's this 63-year-old, and he's got this big gross zit, right here. And then there's this red line that goes over to his eye, and his eye's all red, and it hurts. If I'm lying, I'm dying, y'all. She was 3 months away from graduation. And I said, okay, what do you think the differential diagnosis is for this patient's zit, red line, painful red eye? I think maybe allergies. So, it could be. Allergies will make your eyes red sometimes. You said the eyeball wasn't red. Oh, yeah, no, it's not. I was and do you think that maybe whatever she's allergic to, the other eye might also be allergic to? Oh, yeah, it'd be bilateral. Bonus points for knowing the word bilateral. So what else is on your differential? Maybe trauma. I was well, did anything hit him in the eye? Oh, no, but maybe he just didn't remember. I guess we can diagnose him with dementia and trauma to the eyeball. What else? And there's a couple others that were, somewhat. All I wanted, y'all, was the I word. If you said infection, okay, close enough. We'll go from there. I didn't get that. So after 2 or 3 other bad guesses, I was like, give me one more because, the clock's ticking. We're on the inside of the system. Let's go. And she says, oh, well, I think it could be like, you guys, I swear I'm not lying. I'm not supposed to swear. I promise I'm not lying. It could be like an electrolyte abnormality. To which I answered, okay, well, which electrolyte abnormality in your experience and training have you learned causes unilateral red eye and pain? And she said, like maybe sodium? Again, bonus points for knowing sodium's an electrolyte. But so I said, well, what do you want to do? And then she said, let's do a CBC at a CMP. And then and I was like, all right, well, time's up. We got patients to see. I made her stick to something. She chose allergy. She said, let's put him on Benadryl. And I told her, well, his infection that you failed to diagnose has now become orbital cellulitis, made its way down the optic nerve, which I'm sure you know from your obvious huge amount of training is part of neuroectoderm and therefore part of the brain. And now the patient has meningitis and is dead. That's where it stops being funny because it starts being true. And so I failed her. But then that night I went home. My wife, who's in the front row, is our business manager, and she's awesome. If you haven't met her, she's awesome. But she's not a doctor. And I walked in the door and I was like we're going to play charades. I was like, a guy comes in with a big zit and a red line and a big painful red eye. What do you think's wrong with him? And she's like, I don't know, some kind of infection? and then later that night, I did the same thing. Remember my daughter I told you guys about that does stitches now, who's a freshman? She was 5 at the time. She was in kindergarten, y'all, and I said, same thing, red spot, red line, painful red eye. What do you think might be wrong with this guy? And she's like, I think it's an infection, Daddy. I was like, so anyway, that's the story I wanted to tell you guys. I was told it would help you. Well, thank you very much.